So, being in leadership, you have to be the leader. You've got to be the strong one. It's almost like you can't have a bad day coming in because whatever stressors are on you, if that shows to the team, it's going to translate to the team. So typically, what I try to do is make sure that, I'm there for them, getting them what they need, taking care of them, and then handling myself on the outside somewhere, whether it's when I get off work, whether it's just a quiet moment in my car, watching a funny TikTok or watching whatever it may be, just to have that moment to try to relax, to get back. Because when we go to work, we need to be at our best. That's what gets us home every day.
Everyone, and welcome to the Badges and Breakthroughs podcast, episode 5. I'm your host, Dylan Bates, and I'm so glad you're here. Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to take a moment to thank our incredible sponsors who make this show possible. So first, a huge shout out to the team at Project Icon. They're the creative powerhouse behind the scenes, handling of our editing and promotion, and just production magic. They're incredible, and their attention to detail and passion for storytelling truly brings this podcast to life every single week. We also want to thank the lie detector lady for her support. She's your go-to expert for truth verification and professional credibility assessments, providing reliable polygraph services with integrity and precision. Be sure to check her out if your agency or organization needs trusted results done the right way. She also does for private citizens as well, so reach out to her today. Now, let's get into today's episode. We have an amazing guest joining us, Lieutenant Laura Turner. Laura has nearly a decade of experience in law enforcement and currently serves as a night shift road patrol lieutenant. She's also a crisis negotiator, a wife to a fellow officer, and a proud mom of 2 incredible girls. Laura's journey is one that reflects leadership under pressure, compassion in chaos, and deep commitment to her community and family. She's seen the realities of public safety at its most intense moments, and she continues to lead with calm, empathy, and strength. Laura, welcome to Badges and Breakthroughs. I'm so excited to have you here. To get us started, would you just tell us a bit more about your background and what inspired you to join us today, especially when it comes to navigating the intersections of law enforcement, family life, and mental health?
Great to be here. Like you said, I've got almost a decade worth of law enforcement. Before I was in law enforcement, I was an EMT. So I've always kind of been in that public safety realm of things. I'm, like I said, married to another officer who's actually a corporal at the same place I work at. He's day shift though, so he has, the day walker syndrome. And then of course my 2 beautiful girls, which keep me busy. One's a teenager, one's a preteen, so we're constantly going there. And I really wanted to come on here and just kind of share my experiences and stuff. I've had a few, crises, calls that I've answered before to where I've had my own, mental breakdowns, my own issues there. So just putting the word out there and letting everybody understand that we're all human and, getting that story out there is why I really wanted to do this.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's so great to have you here. I'm super excited to get into this interview. When we first got introduced, I was just enamored. I was so excited to have a woman in law enforcement who has moved up the ranks, is so humble, and still has the balance of family life and managing work and also being married to another officer. I just found it so, interesting. That completely relates to me. I married someone in law enforcement as well, 2 totally different fields of law enforcement. But nonetheless, so I'm super interested to hear about how that relationship has just impacted your life and how, being married to a fellow officer is. And we'll dive into a bunch of questions today, but I'm super excited to have you here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you've spent nearly a decade in law enforcement and now lead as a lieutenant. So if you were to take us back to your early days on patrol, is there one memory that shaped your understanding of this job that what this job really demands mentally, emotionally, or spiritually?
So I kind of have a little bit different because I was an EMT before I came into law enforcement. I got tired of having to wait for the scene to be safe. So that's why I got into the law enforcement. My husband pushed me, said, "Hey, you would be great at this. You need to go ahead and pursue it." And that's how I got into it. Looking back, I guess in my first 3 days, I was, chasing 10 juveniles that had broke into a house on my second day. My third day, I was working a murder, with my FTO and helping them question the suspect and just realizing that what this job demands of you as far as how much really goes into everything. It's not just, what you see on TV every day or whatnot when it comes to cop shows. You legit are out there working and busting your butt every day. So, and just knowing that mental toll, that physical toll, all that would take effect on you. So looking back, definitely that demand was pretty high right when I first started. So I understood what I was getting into at that point.
Absolutely. And you've been in law enforcement for about 10 years, and you said you worked in EMS before?
I did.
Is that that's awesome. It's fine. Thank you for coming to the dark side. Glad to see you. Love the little now no offense to our first responder family. There's the friendly wars. We go back and forth. I will do it all the time. Well, that's was what not done waiting for the scene to be clear. That was funny. Huh.
Sweated the streets, definitely. I used to get so frustrated because we'd have, someone down that was shot or something, and we had to wait, and you couldn't get in there. And I had that servant heart. I want to go help. I want to go be there. So being able to be there first on scene is, one of the favorite things I love about it, getting to help people.
Yeah. And being, once you get on that scene, you're part of their story, no matter what. And so how you represent yourself and your department and even the things that you're carrying personally, that can all affect that moment that you're with this person and in what is probably one of the worst moments of their life. And so you're carrying not only their burdens, but your own and your professional, representation of the department. And everybody has bad days. There's been many times that, I'm sure that you have responded to calls where you've been not in the best mood or, it's just one of those days. You had a really bad scene and you still have to keep carrying on the rest of your shift. So more power to you. Thank you for doing what you do. Really appreciate it. You did mention earlier that you work nights, and I thought it was funny because your husband's day shift and you work night. I myself am a night shift person. I'm evenings. Spring shift is my favorite, but I'll take night shifts. Anything not to be on day work. So, yeah, I love that. My husband's the morning person. He's not nice in the morning first when you wake up. But once he gets up and has all his stuff, he's good to go, like immediately. And I'm more of the waking up and we had a conversation and I don't remember any of it.
Definitely.
Yeah. So working nights, you really see the profession at its most raw. Like those are the most critical times. The quiet moments and the chaos. What's a story from the night shift that still plays in your mind? And what did it teach you about yourself from both an officer and a human perspective?
So it honestly crazy, going almost 10 years into this. This was actually a recent call in the last probably 6 months that we've worked. My husband and I had just finished having dinner and the tones dropped for a GSW multiple victims down. So we get on scene and there were multiple victims that had been shot. And I mean, that chaos, basically. There's people everywhere. There's injuries, everything. And that scene really stuck out with me. After being in this, like I said, 10 years, this is easily the top 3 worst scenes I've seen since I've been in law enforcement. I reviewed it with my team that night because I have some pretty young guys on my shift. So I reviewed it with them, made sure they were okay because I know if it is worse, if it's bad for me, it's definitely bad for my new guys. Talked to them about it, and it still kind of hung with me all night. So my husband, like I said, had responded with me. Well, that morning when I got home, he was already up and getting ready for, whatever we're doing that day. And I remember sitting on the bed with him and I just broke down. I said, I feel like I could have done more. I wish I could have done more because unfortunately not everybody on that scene made it that night. Some of the victims passed away. And I mean, that does take a toll on you after a while, but for some reason that scene just sticks with me. But realizing that it, was affecting me that emotionally, to be able to have my husband there to talk to be able to show those raw emotions, those raw feelings, and understand that it's okay to have that moment. We can't save everybody, but as long as we have done our best, that's all we can ask for. And that's exactly what my husband said. He goes, "You did everything you could have that night." He said, "Just remember, we don't make the final call." He said, "There's somebody bigger than us that makes that final call. You just did everything that you could that night." So that, like I said, to be in this job this long already, and that call recently being one of the top three is pretty, pretty rough.
Yeah. When you say that, you're able to be raw and feel these emotions, can you tell me more about the emotions that you were experiencing when you were dealing with that? Maybe on the scene and versus after when you got to come home and kind of decompress with your husband? Was there a compressing on the scene, or was it you were able to feel them and just kind of work through them concurrently?
On the scene, it's work. You go in there, you do the job, you get it done, you help where you can. There were a ton of people out there. Obviously, we've got crowd control, so me being a lieutenant, I'm making sure that I've got people where they need to be at, controlling the crowd, protecting the crime scene, making sure we're doing what we have to. So, work mode is work mode. You've got to get the job done regardless of what's going on around you. Most of us work well in chaos. We're able to be that calm in chaos. Now, when you have those quiet moments in your patrol car, that's when it's like, "Oh crap, what did we just go through?" And that's why I knew afterwards that I needed to talk to my guys. And I did. I brought them all into the office that night and we talked about it. I'm pretty open with them. They know that if there's something that they don't feel comfortable talking about in front of, the other deputies, they can talk to me outside of it. They can call me. They know I'm there for them because, again, I'm lucky. I have an outlet at home. My husband has done this job 12 years. So he's done it a little bit longer than I have. But I have that outlet to be able to come home, and if I need to just, lose it per se, to cry, to get mad, to say what I need to be said, he's there for me. So I'm very lucky to have that.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Not everyone in this job has the ability to have the outlet at home. So being there as a leader for them and having that kind of open door policy, uh, I'm sure that brings a lot to your department and a lot to the officers who serve with you, and for you. And knowing that there's not going to be that repercussion if they say that they're struggling with something is so important, because the top three things that we talk about that I get complaints of for my clients is bad leadership. Bad leadership driving, not backing their officers, not backing what their decisions are, or the micromanaging of things. And it sounds like you're really take lead of scenes, but also let your officers do what they need to do and be there for them and be there for your husband when you get home. So I really appreciate you saying all that and going through that and just being vulnerable with it. So thank you.
Of course.
As a crisis negotiator, you're often stepping into someone's worst moment. So can you share a negotiation or a scene that forced you to dig deep emotionally? Maybe one where what you said rather, or maybe even something you didn't say had made all the difference?
So I'm lucky. I do have a negotiator team. It's me and another lieutenant. Me and her are actually really close. We're pretty good friends. But we got a call one night. It was my shift working for a man that was at a graveyard. His wife had recently passed away, so he was over there where, she had been buried at. And he was having a crisis moment. His family went out there to try to help him, and he didn't want their help. He did have a firearm on him. My deputies are responding to the scene. They get there, and we get in a very short car chase with him. And he parks in the middle of the road in the middle of nowhere in this county. And he just didn't want to talk at first. My partner gets on scene and we start figuring out, okay, how can we get a hold of him? We end up getting him on the phone and we talked to him. I think it's like 4 hours or something, but we kept talking to him. And the biggest thing, as long as they're talking, they're not hurting themselves or somebody else. He kept calling us annoying little gnats. because he said our voices were annoying and we don't always divulge in, our personal life to them because, it's just you typically just don't. So he thought we were singles. He's like, "Yeah, no wonder y'all are single, you sound like a gnat on the phone." But we were able to keep him talking. By the end of the night, we had made the decision to, if he gave us his firearm, we would let him go home because we talked to him for so long. He's like, "I don't want to hurt myself. I just want to go home and go to bed." Or, and we said, "Well, will you go get help?" He said, "Yeah, I'll go get help." Well, we made sure he got home that night, after he got his firearm. And I'd always kind of wondered what happened to him. It didn't quite sit well with me because I want to help somebody. I knew he was in a crisis. I knew he was struggling emotionally. About a year later, my partner received a text message from him. And in that text message, it was said, "Thank you, you annoying little gnats. You saved my life that night." And it was because we talked to him just about anything and everything. And yeah, we may have been annoying to him at that moment, but to get that text message a year later helped us just know that we did the right thing, that we were talking to him and saying the right things that we should have said that night. So that was that's probably one of the biggest ones. I actually use that. I've taught a negotiator class and I use that as my example of what we go through as negotiators. So
That's incredible. You know, being in law enforcement and on the job, I think in the beginning, and I know that you and I had talked about this when we first met, but, you know, going through the job, you're meeting people in their most critical moments, and there's so many things that can go wrong, and your influence can change it all. Come part of that story. And, we all get into the job, most of us get into the job for the right reasons because we want to help people and because we don't want the same thing every single day, even if that means sacrificing our own well being and mental health and physical safety to be there for someone else in their worst moments, to be that protector. And sometimes, I hate to say it, but we're protecting people from their own self, and when you're able to do that, it's a real different kind of helping someone. That being that crisis negotiator, the times that you're taking with them, that was time that you invested because you cared. And I'm not. Did you say he was suicidal? Or
he had anger on him. He never made the comment to us, but he kept saying he needed help and that he just wanted to see his wife. So he never blatantly said, but the sentences he was using, it did lead us to believe that's what was going to happen. That's why we were like, "Look, we'll let you go home. Just give us the firearm." And we had our entire SRT out there. So when he laid the firearm outside of his car, our SRT guys go in there, they get it, and he made sure he got home that night. And it we were thankful that nothing happened, but you always, especially leaving that scene after being on it for so long that night, you just wonder. You wonder, okay, is he okay? Did he go get help? Is his family there? Because his family stayed on scene with us too. They weren't right where we were talking with them. They were, safely away, but they were there waiting on. They wanted to help him as well because they knew he was going through a tough time.
yeah. May I ask if you're comfortable? What state are you in law enforcement?
I'm in Burke County, Georgia. So we are the second largest county in the state with, I think it's 852 square miles.
Okay, wow. In Georgia, is it a crime to kill yourself?
It is not. So that was kind of our thought. You hate to say it, it's not illegal to kill yourself. But, as someone that wants to help somebody, you try to do the best you can. The only thing you can do is pray that everything you said helped, or they go get the help they need and that they change their mind. That's, if you can't get to a resolution or can't say, "Hey, I think you need to go talk to somebody," and they actually go.
Yeah, I want to dive into this for a moment because I want people to understand law enforcement, that perspective when we're responding to someone who is planning to kill themselves or we believe this is, sometimes they come out as suspicious persons. Realize you're ending up in this situation with very little variables that can be controlled and very little information. So I want to paint the picture of this for the public, if you will. Um, Everywhere I've worked, it's not a crime to commit suicide as well. That's never been a thing. So I think the new policing motto is often, we take our time with these. We try to make contact. We set up, I'm sure there's EMS on standby. You have that in case the worst things happen. You have SWAT on standby, and then you have your negotiators, and then you have your intel gatherers who are going back and forth between all these pieces. The family having to, keep them calm enough to get maybe utilize information, backgrounds, things someone likes, someone doesn't like. That may be a trigger for them if you talk about it. You're getting all of this information and coordinating with other command staff for the incident command, and all of these moving parts. And you're the negotiator on the phone, and you're just getting passed notes of information. You're like, yep, don't care, don't read this. Oh, I don't know or what you just said. So you have your second person who's there saying, oh, maybe this. And the person talking is the hostage negotiator. That's the lead, and really making those determinations of what to say, and having to sometimes go back and forth with incident command and keep SWAT back and rule of these things. But I really want to talk about that because I think it's really important for the public to know that these are the types of situations that can often be the most dangerous. Besides traffic stops and domestic violence, these are some of the most critical and dangerous situations that officers put themselves in, and it is a civil matter. I hate to say that, but it is not against the law. This is not something that a police department has to respond to. It is their response because they care, and it costs thousands of dollars of resources and coordination, sometimes with multiple agencies, to get done. And these incidents can't be rushed. So when you have leadership who has a hostage crisis negotiation team, and you have leadership who is willing to put those resources in and get SWAT on, get all the backup officers, have the street clear, you have to have that perimeter. All of these things and these moving parts, have the intel officers there passing you notes while being silent and doing all of this. I want to lay out the pressure that hostage negotiator is under. And also, I want to give a perspective to the community because this is a civil matter and we are there. You respond because you value their life. It is not something criminal. This is something that officers are doing because we truly care. And I'm sure this call did not come in at the beginning of your shift. It probably came in towards the end, middle or end, and until it's through. Oftentimes some departments have, a time gap on how long and one negotiator is allowed to stay. Some is 8 hours, some is, 12, 14, so on and so forth. I think no one should really go beyond the 16-hour mark, especially if you've already been through your shift for half the time, and I want people to know that, you saying all this, you're not angry. You're not angry that you're there. You didn't, even though it was a call regarding dancing around suicidal ideation. The behaviors, the statements that were being made, they were there. They were pitching at, but we did not. You were able to assess in that call, but he was not a danger to others. You were able to core enough with him, even though he was calling you little gnats. The fact that he started saying that gave you a nickname.
Exactly.
That
Personally. Exactly.
Yeah, when they are able to talk with you and get that, and you're able to get that rapport, it may sound bad to the public, but it is the best news for us because that means taking that time to have this conversation with us and give us that opportunity to have that. And this is the police work that is so thankless and so unrecognized. The most you hear about it is that, a road was blocked off for 14 hours by whatever police department. And, it's an inconvenience to the whole neighbors and everyone wants to know what's going on and all this stuff. And they're blaming the police, for doing this and their inconveniences. But they don't know that you, as the first responder, as the hostage negotiator, that was you being able to save that person's life. And while it inconvenienced maybe hundreds of others, you took that time. Your agency devoted and paid for that time to be there for that man and in these moments, no matter how long it takes. So I want to give recognition to that and really show people that, because not a lot of agencies will do that. Some command staff don't give that time. Some command staff rush it. Some say we don't have enough officers, which my agency, I've been there time and time again. Just me and an officer instead of, and we're the down for the entire city. We've had to call people out of their beds. I've had to call the chief out to my scenes because there was literally no other officer due to weather, in Alaska. So, I want to give recognition to you and your department and thank you, because the public doesn't get to see those moments because they're private, and the resources, the coordination, and the pressure that you're under and the heart that you had behind it is because you truly care. Because at the end of the day, I've definitely been on scenes where officials have called it and said, okay, well, that's on them. And we're out of resources. But the fact that your agency gives you that time and pays all that money for that is miraculous. And you guys deserve a lot of credit for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I have a great team. The other negotiator, like I said, she's another lieutenant, great friend, and she cares about this job, probably, just, I know she does just as much, if not more than myself. She, pours her heart into this job. And then we have a great work with our command, with SRT. They let us do our job. If we can talk to them, they're going to let us. Now, if we're not making leeway and we're not getting anywhere and it is something that we think is a danger, then we'll give the go ahead and be like, look, we can't get any further. You guys go do the SWAT thing. We'll, but again, even when we're talking with somebody, if we're not gaining leeway, if we're trying to at least gain a little bit of information for SWAT to let them know, hey, look, this is where he's at in the residence or in the call, whatever it may be, to help them too. So, it's just a great teamwork when it comes to all of that.
I'm gonna say the line, and I know you're gonna get it. And any hostage negotiator or crisis CIO out there is gonna get it. Just come to the window so I can see you're okay.
Exactly.
Want to make sure. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for going into depth with that. And letting me lay that out for everyone. And I think you did an amazing job. So thank you for sharing that, because we don't get to hear those stories very often, especially from the crisis leaders themselves. We hear them from SWAT and things like that, but it works as a team. And I love that you guys are also a cohesive team unit, because you also get a lot of SWAT guys who are like just ready, or ERO, whatever you call them, are ready. They're like, okay, let us in. It's been this long, but so I think that that's amazing. That chain of command, it speaks volumes about the leadership and the way that your department cares. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Of course.
So speaking of leadership, leadership in law enforcement can mean being strong for everyone else while quietly shouldering your own weight. I know that well myself. And so I wanted to ask you, how do you carry those invisible burdens? And has there ever been a time when they nearly became too heavy?
So, I mean, being in leadership, you have to be the leader. You've got to be the strong one. It's almost like you can't have a bad day coming in, because whatever stressors are on you, if that shows to the team, it's going to translate to the team. So typically what I try to do is make sure that, I'm there for them, getting them what they need, taking care of them, and then handling myself on the outside somewhere, whether it's when I get off work, whether it's just a quiet moment in my car, watching a funny TikTok or watching whatever it may be, just to have that moment to try to relax, to get back. Because when we go to work, we need to be at our best. That's what gets us home every day. Because if we've got our mind somewhere else, then we're not doing a service to ourselves or even to the team, even being a leader. So, I mean, that's kind of, just the basic answer for it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Yeah, everyone's decompression time and coming home looks different. And it's crazy because the law enforcement is so often, turning to alcohol or, substance abuse and things like that. And it's easy. Everything in law enforcement is, regarded with alcohol, whether you have a bad day or a good day, celebration or a memorial service, there's alcohol, like, you know, um, so, it's great that you have someone to come home to and that you're able to decompress with and someone who understands. My husband, when he comes home, his decompression is literally like nothing. Sometimes he'll grab, if it's a bad day, he'll grab a drink and he'll walk out on the deck and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna leave for like a little bit. He'll come in when he's ready. Go, it's not, and, but me, I have to strip everything immediately, like head to toe. I need to just be washed from the day. But he'll come in, he'll sit around, walk in the house in his boots and stuff. I take my boots off at the door, can't stand it. And everyone's process is different. So I love that you're able to do something healthy. And if you ever need any more tips on that, I'm more than happy to provide them. We have that on our Patreon page. So would love to connect with you on there as well. All right, so behind the badge, there's the toll that rarely gets discussed: sleep deprivation, hyper alertness, emotional fatigue. What has been, your personal experience with burnout or compassion fatigue? And have you ever learned a way about like coming back from it, or have you experienced it or had to walk someone else through that?
I've definitely been there. It's where I block, my family off for a while. Like, I didn't reach this point I'm at now right when I started my career. There were times where I would just shut off. If I had a bad day, I wasn't talking to nobody. I wasn't going to do anything. I just shut them off and, try to deal with it myself. And it wasn't until I reached a breaking point. Then it just happened to be at the doctor's office when I reached that breaking point. All he did was just ask me how work was going. And I broke down and lost it. And that's when I realized, like, I need to really figure this out. It wasn't long after I had mine little, breakdown like that. And I had told my husband about it. I was like, you need to talk to somebody too. I see the same thing that I was doing in you. And he took my advice and went and talked to somebody. And that's how we are able now to have the relationship we do, because we didn't have it, when we first got into this. Like I said, he's been in a little bit longer than I have. But now we're able to have that for each other. When that sleep deprivation is horrible, working night shift. Like I say, that if you work from working nights, you don't get sleep. Both my kids play ball and have other activities they do. So I work night shift. If they have something going on, I'm there normally. So it's nothing to go 2, 3, have 2, 3 hours of sleep and work or go do whatever. So, I mean, you just have to realize it and understand sometimes, like, hey, I need to take a break. I need to go, you know, get some sleep or talk about something. So,
Yeah, absolutely. When you find yourself in the compassion fatigue, is there a way that you bring yourself out of it?
I guess really, recognizing it and understanding, hey, I need to do something about this. I'm numb to things, which is not good for a family life. I don't want my girls seeing that. So it's more or less like a pep talk to myself, or, I'll go walk around the neighborhood or something that day while they're at school to try to clear my head, get the thoughts out that I need to get out, think, and then have a fresh start for them when they get home that day. And, that way mom's back. It's not, this shell of a person.
Yeah, I love that. Uh, does your agency have any type of peer support program or anything like that?
We do. They do have a peer support. I'm not on peer support, but I know the guys that are and the girls that are, and they're a great group. They're definitely there for you if you need it. I do have a great command staff too that knows, each of us pretty well. And they know if I'm having a bad day, they'll be like, "Hey, come in here, let's talk." And they'll bring me in and they'll sit me down and talk with me, and they'll help me get out whatever I need to get out. They've taken people that are struggling with whatever, may be in their life. They've helped them get help, locally and stuff. We actually have a place here that we're very fortunate to have that is for first responders, and it's for, ones that suffer from alcoholism, PTSD, anything that they may be struggling with. we can go there if we need help. So our command staff has even had people go there, but our command staff is pretty involved with us, and, they understand we're people first, and we have families, and we need to be there for them too, so.
Oh, it's great. It is very rare to hear that, a department is supportive of work-life balance and of mental health of its officers. So I love being able to hear that, and I'm so glad that there are still departments that are doing that. And I think it is becoming more and more popular. I think it's, agencies that don't have the support for the mental health without the stigma for their officers. It's at this point, it's a liability to not have it. Just how can you not? Um, so I just think that's amazing. And I'm so glad that there's still leadership that is going above and beyond and being able to do that and know their people, because it's really easy, especially as getting into a leadership position. It would be easy for you. There's so much paperwork and so much stuff you have to do behind the scenes the officers don't know about, and so many things that you're taking hits for to protect them, right? It would be easy to not know your officers, and I think a lot of leaders do that, and I personally, I believe that's a mistake, and that's just my personal opinion, but, when you separate that humanity from knowing your officers and knowing a little bit about them, who they are as a person, and what their strengths, weaknesses, capabilities are, what their even personal viewpoints are on situations. When you know your officers that way, it helps you run your department, because you're like, oh, this person would be perfect for this assignment. I know that they're able to get this done. This is their strength. Or I have someone who's weak in this area. I want to put them together and, wash that team, because they'll work off of each other's and they'll bring each other both up. So amazing. That truly is amazing and so inspiring. And it is definitely rare. So I'm really glad to hear it. And that just warms my heart, truly.
Yeah, we're, like I said, super lucky. Like, my command staff, they know my kids. Obviously, they know my husband, he works there, but they know my girls. They know them by name. They know stuff about me. We've been in a couple of situations as a family, had tough times or whatever, and my sheriff will personally call me and say, "Hey, do you guys need anything?" And at my first department I worked for, you didn't get that. Now, granted, it was a larger department, but still, to have that personal touch means so much. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree. Well, talked a lot about you and your husband, and I do have to ask a more intriguing question that has been on my mind. So, you and your husband both are wearing a badge, and you talk about how how that shared experience really impacts your marriage, and maybe the moments of deep understanding, but also, I know I'm going to say it, I'm sorry, but I have to ask, the emotional echo when both of you have had hard nights, and or maybe even differences in how a scene was handled, which, differences on that. And that's a challenge I know well myself. My husband and I have very different opinions.
mhm. Um, so of course, yes, it's great having him there. It is wonderful. I have somebody there to talk to. I have that support system. However, there have been times when we have not agreed on the way a call was handled, the way something was, done or whatnot. And I mean, there's typically that conversation that we have. He'll voice his opinion, I'll voice my opinion, and most of the time we have to sit there and say, you know what, that's how you look at it. This is how I look at it. We're just going to agree to disagree. Even though, yes, I do bring it home as far as when I'm having a rough day, or he brings it home when he's having a rough day, or whatever it may be. We try to keep that work at work for the most part, unless we need to talk to somebody. Family life is family life. Work life is work life. Now, being in supervision, my phone goes off every day, even on my off days, but that's fine. He understands that. But I also know when that phone goes down, it's back to family life. That's what we're here for. We're husband and wife and mom and dad first. So
That's amazing. Are May I ask, are you religious?
we are. Obviously, we believe that Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior. and both of us pray. We're very strong into that. We believe that's who, keeps us here. Like I said earlier, we're not the one that make the final call. He is, the Lord is. So, well, but definitely we are.
I asked that because I imagine that um I don't think I asked you that question before, but as a Christian myself, I mean, I feel it. Like I feel that spirituality from here, we're 1,000 miles away from each other. We're just on video call, and I feel that from here. And I think that that's something I'm sure that that has brought you two closer together when there are disagreements, because at the end of the day, like you said, you got to go home. And he, to the Christian Bible, the relation that God has the order of a household in is God. Husband is leader, wife is submissive to the husband, and kids come after that. And I know that that for me has definitely raised
Oh, yeah.
hard to turn off. It's hard to turn off that, you're a leader. You're also a type A personality. You both are. And I imagine, thankfully we've never worked at the same department. I don't think it would go well, but I think it's amazing that you both do, and that you're a woman of such strength that your demeanor is just calm. You're not over, analyzing. You're not over, expressing the power that you have as a leader. You're so humble, and it is just really amazing to see. And I really appreciate that about your personality, and I love that you're able to turn it off, turn it on at work and take leadership roles and all that stuff. But when you get home, you're able to submit to your husband still. Be the mom, be the wife, be the family person that they need you to be. And I just find that amazing, because I think a lot of people struggle with it, including myself. I'm trying to find that balance myself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say that every day it's easy. There are some days that are harder than others. Sometimes, some days it's harder to turn off that lieutenant to corporal relationship. It happens, but I have to remind myself that, this is home. Home is a safe place. So,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, my husband and I always say that I'm not your enemy. Like we'll get into a healthy discussion, and one of us will stop, take a deep breath, and go, wait, you're not the problem. The problem is the problem. We
mhm.
can disagree about the problem, but we are not the enemies. The problem is the enemy. Let's work through it together. So I love that. Yep. So every officer has had a moment when they realize the job has changed how they see humanity, for better or worse. What was that for you?
I know it's not just one call. It is the accumulation of everything. Being in it almost 10 years, you see every side of somebody you possibly can. Like you said earlier, they're not calling you on their good days. They're not calling just to chit chat. They're not going to have you come out there just to say, hey, I baked a pie today. Do you want some? That's not why they're calling us. So, it's the accumulation of all of that. And I definitely can look back now and see that I'm a completely different person than I was 20 years ago. Not just by age, but by my personality, by the way that I handle myself, by the way that I look at things differently now, that the hypervigilance that we all have, where you've got to sit at the back of the restaurant, that I wouldn't have done that 20 years ago, and seeing the bad side of so much. It's hard not to sit there and look at humanity and go, man, this is awful. It's hard to be that, not to be cynical about it. But I have to remind myself, I have 2 girls at home, and I don't want them growing up hating the world, or, going, this is, that's, I just don't want that. I want them to understand that, yes, there's bad people in the world, there's bad things that happen, but it's still a good place. There's still good people. Just because I don't go to the good people every day doesn't mean that they're not out there. So I try to keep that to a minimum. Doesn't always happen, but I mean, I guess that's just the biggest thing, is making sure that they understand that not everybody's a bad person.
Yeah, that's certainly hard to do, and I think you said it perfectly that it's not just one incident. Even you can take an incident and you're like, "Yeah, all right, they're having a bad day." But it is the accumulation of all of these consistent days that and incidents that you're responding to, and it doesn't mean they're bad people. They're having bad days, they're having bad moments, but it is really hard, especially when you're going to our like frequent flyers. It's hard to remember that, or it's hard to do that. But I know that we had talked before about this, and I was just in awe of your ability to really build rapport with people and take that time and invest in people. And I think that in law enforcement, especially in busy areas, it's really easy for us to turn that off and compartmentalize and, take the scene, take the law, and go, okay, letter of the law, done with it. But, the job comes with the ability to make the discretion. And I think that at some point in our careers, that is challenged. You forget about the spirit of the law, and you forget that people are human and having bad days too. And sometimes it takes them multiple times before they can wake up and see that, oh, they are in a domestic violence situation and they're finally ready to leave, or, that something's got to give. And sometimes it takes 20, 30 times of getting these calls and going to them. And, but you get to see that it is a privilege to be there in those people's worst moments. And that comes with a lot of responsibility and being able to have that compassion and not go, oh, here I go again, going to Joe Schmo's house. We've all done it. I don't even know we're trying to even count. Go ahead. It looks like you want to say something.
Well, like I was going to say, you kind of hit on it. We may have gone to a house 20 times for a domestic violence, but if this is the 21st time and she has finally decided to leave that, or he has finally decided to leave that, then that's what we need to do. We need to do everything possible to get them to a safe place at that point. So yeah, it might get, oh man, we're going to the same house again. But what if this time's different? Or you respond to an overdose and you've gone to this guy 5, 6 times that you've Narcan before. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Why didn't he just stop? Well, what if this time when you go, he actually does stop and he changes his life and he goes to rehab, or, she changes her life. That's what we're there for. We're supposed to be there for these people. So,
And it is hard too, because the other aspect of it is we are law enforcement officers. That is the name. Whether you're a sheriff's, whether you're corrections, whether you're a police officer or federal agents, at the end of the day, your job is being a law enforcement officer. But that is not where it ends. That's where it begins. And I think that we lose sight of that. It's easy to lose sight of it, and we often do. And just being able to remember that that's the beginning. That is not the ending of it. We do so much more, and it's impossible to prepare for every single scenario and situation, of course. But as long as you go into it, you need to be ready, right? Stay ready, see up, ready. Prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. Try for the best. And maybe you'll get through to someone. Maybe it took having that side conversation with them 20 times before they finally get it. Maybe one of those was tough love, but the next time you go in at a different angle, you're also learning about them and trying to help them. So now I think it's important. I've been at scenes where I've had officers watch my back, and I have prayed with victims, or I've even prayed with suspects, and it wasn't against policy. It was definitely I was getting weird looks from officers, but it didn't matter, because at the end of the day, we go in this job to change the world. But what that means, really, it's impossible to change the world, but it's not impossible to change someone's world. And that is what we do, is one by one, you're changing lives.
if you can change one, just one, then you've done your job. I mean, and that's my husband will tell you, that's a hill I will always die on, of if I can touch one person, just one, and they make a better decision the next time, or, whatever it may be, that I've done my job. So that's a huge passion of mine.
Well, Um, Being a mother grounds you in ways that the uniform never could, I'm sure. And I wanted to know, has there ever been a call or incident that changed how you show up at home as a parent or how you protect your kids from the world that you have seen? I know you touched on it earlier.
Yeah, there's been a couple of instances. So we had a call one time and a decision was made. I ended up arresting somebody, and majority of the public did not agree with it. It made the news around here. It was a pretty big deal. Now my command staff supported me in the decision that was made and, everything. However, I have two girls that ride a bus to school every morning, and people that didn't agree with the decision that was made posted pictures of my house online, basically posting our address, you know, driving by our house. The girls came in one morning because they're waiting for the bus. They said, Mama, there's somebody driving by the house with their phone out. And, that as a parent, one is scary, let alone then being an officer, it's even more scary because we have take home cars. So the patrol cars are in my driveway right now. And so they know it's me. It's not like they had it wrong or anything. So as a parent, it makes you more protective. Luckily, my department put my house on a house watch. They made sure that my kids were safe, that that everything was fine. I'm lucky to have that. But you try to protect your kids from what you can, but not all the time. Now they probably don't know the ins and outs of all that one because it was just a decision that was made. But there, there's other instances where, well, there was one other instance, I should say, that my kids were actually the victims of something, and it was with a fellow, colleague that I used to work with. He had put my kids' pictures on a pedophile site. I got notified of it, and we, went through the steps of getting investigators involved, everything. My kids have always been taught that if an officer comes to their school to get them, that they are to go with them. Because unfortunately, in this line of work, we all know what that officer coming to the door means. I've told my kids from day one, if someone comes in uniform, you need to go with them. Well, this was going on with this, ex-colleague, and they had told him that, like, he had been questioned about it. And then the next day he went missing. So we couldn't find him. I had gotten a word that he was missing from somebody, and I immediately threw my badge and gun on, and I went to the school and got my kids because I was afraid that he was going to go get my kids. I didn't know what could happen. All I knew is I needed to protect my kids. When we got there, or when I got there to the school, I had already called the principal on my way there. I said, hey, look, if somebody shows up in a uniform, do not let my kids go with them. I'm on my way now. And kind of gave him a rundown. He said, no problem. I've got your girls. They're fine. Pick them up. And my kids were like, why are you picking us up early? I said, no reason. Why do you have your gun on? Why do you have your badge on? No reason. Just let's go home. We get home and they knew something was up. And all I told them was there's a bad guy out there. We don't need to, you don't need to worry. Mom and dad are here to protect you. But just know, that's why we came and got you. And that's all I told them. I didn't want to tell them all the details. But that's something I won't tell them until they're older because they don't need to know that. But the guy actually, that it was either that day or the next day, he ended up committing suicide. So, we never had to deal with any of the court case or anything like that. But, that's, as a parent, it's your worst nightmare. As an officer, it's even more because that was somebody you trusted. That was somebody that I worked with for years and betrayed my trust greatly. So
I imagine during that, that really broke, that probably really broke one of your core beliefs in law enforcement about having each other's backs and, coming into the thin blue line. And that's one of the reasons it gets a bad report, right? Because of the bad apples. But I think, what you said in there is extremely important, that man, your family was not only doxxed and you stayed in, but then your own brother in the line of duty takes advantage of you and completely puts your kids online on a pedophilia site. And man, I can't believe the emotion that you must have been going through, and that feeling and that belief of these are supposed to be the people that have my back, that are we stand toe to toe with everything else. And people have their differences, but he doxed you, not only you, but your kids. I am so sorry, and I'm so proud of you for being able to stay in this line because of that core belief shattering. That must have been world breaking.
It was. I guess I have the understanding though too. There's bad apples everywhere. Whether I'm in law enforcement, whether I'm a nurse, whether I'm whatever, there's bad apples in every profession. Ours just gets shown more. And was it tough? Yes, because this was somebody that when I started working in, day one in the jail, he was on my shift. When I went to road patrol, he was on my shift. So, it was somebody I had trusted my life with wholeheartedly because that's what we do in this job. If you're on the same shift, I trust my life with in your hands. And it was just so hard to believe. My husband was furious. It was, a hard time because both of us were so emotional about trying to protect our girls and just could not believe that it was somebody like that.
I imagine it was also hard being parents that, remembering too that you have to go through the process of the law and handling it through legal methods, especially when you have the means and the capability to otherwise handle it yourselves. So I commend you for that restraint. That's incredible.
It was a definite reminder. I'm way more reserved than my husband when it comes to stuff. I understand that we have to do things certain ways and stuff. But my husband, of course, those are his babies, those are his girls, and he wanted to do anything and everything to protect them, which I wholeheartedly understand. But I had to remind him, look, there's a way to do this, and we have to do it the right way. If we want justice in this, it has to go the right way. So,
Absolutely. Well, I have to ask, do you feel, obviously he committed suicide, do you feel that was justice, or would you have rather him go through the system?
I'd rather it gone through the system. It was just my girls that we were able to know about. He got rid of a lot of the stuff, I'm assuming, from what I was told. So we don't know if there were more victims or anything like that. And, you worry at that point because if there were, then they didn't know, they don't have their justice or anything. I would like to have seen it gone through the court system at that point, or at least a full investigation. Because obviously with him committing suicide, that's it. But, at least we don't have to face him. I mean, that is the silver lining, I guess, of all of it. But again, that justice just doesn't seem like it's been served.
Yeah. I do think it's incredible that after all of that, you still stay strong in believing and serving in law enforcement in that community and with your department. Obviously, your department backed you and was able to be through that and were willing to take those steps. But things like that can get ugly, of course. And so I'm glad that you were able to be backed by your department, and I commend you for being able to still see the good in law enforcement. And it goes to show that, when you see on the news all the time, law enforcement is not appreciated. We're often not wanted. It also shows that there are bad apples and we report them. And we also can become and have been many times victims ourselves. And, there's a lot of us who would quit after that. But you didn't. You and your husband both stayed strong and made it through. And I find that incredible.
Yeah, it was the guy had worked at our previous agency. So thankfully, we were at a completely different agency, but even our old agency still a lot of the guys that we were friends with, or, even, the girls or whatever, they supported us too. They would call us, "Hey, do you guys need anything during that week?" "Hey, I just heard about this. Do y'all need, what do y'all need?" And even afterwards, once it hit the news, same thing, phone calls, "Hey, we're here for y'all, whatever y'all need." So, I mean, the support system is there, in this job. And like I said, there's bad apples everywhere. Unfortunately, ours just get shown a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, leadership isn't only about rank, it's about example. And I think, yeah, you just lead by example. You exude leading by example and leadership. And a lot of women in law enforcement get a bad reputation. And we're so far and few between that I think that those get kind of blown out more, and it's nice to see a woman in law enforcement who does truly lead by example. So if can you tell me about a time, when someone on your team was struggling mentally or emotionally, and how did you recognize it and how did you respond?
So I like to think that I know my guys pretty well. I have, I think most that I can usually have is about six. I'm a little bit 6 or 7, that'll work on my shift usually. But one in particular, he's no longer on my shift. He actually moved to a different department, got higher rank, so I'm super proud of him. But he was struggling with some stuff that was going on at home. And I could tell just by the way he was walking in roll call in the afternoons. You could tell he wasn't his happy go lucky self. He wasn't, he was a pretty proactive deputy. He wasn't doing as many traffic stops or being proactive like he was. So I knew something was off. And we have a mapping system, of course, a GPS system, so I could see where everybody is. And I found him one night up at, sitting in a parking lot, and I went to him and I said, "All right, let's talk it out." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You're not yourself." I said, "If you feel comfortable, talk to me about it." I said, "I'm here for you. Whatever you need to talk to me about, I'm here for you." And he sat there and he told me, what he had going on, what his struggles were, that were going on in his life. And I looked at him, I said, "Look, we have bad days. We're still human. We still have issues, and stressors at home." I said, "If you need time, you just let me know. If you need to come in late one day, if you need to leave early, let me know. Whatever I can help you with, you let me know." And, he appreciated it. And I even told him, I said, "Look, even on our days off," I was like, "if you need somebody to talk to, that's what I'm here for." I was like, "I'm not just your lieutenant. I'm your friend." I was like, "That's why I'm here." So, and I mean, he appreciated it and he got through everything, and, you know, he'd call me every so often, "Hey, I need to come in late," or whatever. But that's okay. Sometimes we need that if we have to take care of something. So, and like I said, he got through it and he's doing bigger and better things now, and I'm super proud of him. So,
What you did, by going to him, recognizing it while you guys were in person and, in roll call, as you said, and going to him in the field, I, oh, I find that amazing. A lot of leaders, we have all had them. The ones who we have an incident, you go back, they go, you do a little hot wash, you do a little debrief, and they go, "Cool. Everyone okay? Anyone need to talk?" And it's the blank stares of like, "Really?" And you know your people. And that's the most important thing, is knowing that maybe no one spoke up here, and truly being able to say that, "Hey, does anyone need to talk?" is great, but following it up with, "Hey, reach me on my cell, give me a call or stop by my office today," whatever. But you didn't just do that. You went above and beyond. You went a field. Most lieutenants don't leave their office. So that's amazing. Again, like, just going above and beyond and taking those little things mean everything. Sometimes that changes someone's life so dramatically, and maybe they won't tell you for a long time, or maybe never, but those little moments, even not just for the community, you're doing it for your officers, and that's just incredible. So thank you. Speaking of that, communication is the heart of crisis negotiation, but it's also the heart of survival. Okay. So How is learning to listen in high stakes moments helped you understand your own mental and emotional needs off duty?
So, like you said, listening. That was the hardest thing, like acting. Like, not just, okay, yeah, I hear you, actively listening to whatever is going on. And then using that on myself too. I needed to actively listen to what my head and what my body was telling me. So that's how I, realize, hey, I really need to make sure I'm taking care of myself. My kids joke all the time. They're like, "Oh, you're using your negotiation tactics on dad, I see," or something like that. Because I'll just say, "Uh-huh," and listen and do this and just stuff like that. Like, "We see you, mama. We know what's happening."
Tell me more about that, right?
Right, exactly. Like, let's look at Matt, so mm, exactly. So really, mm, that's really, I mean, just that, like I said, actively listening to myself, to my, understanding when I need that support.
Yeah. I am curious, being able to listen to yourself and what you need, recognizing the signs in yourself. You said it earlier, and I didn't bring it up, but I did want to say that self awareness is such an important part of this job. And it's something that you don't get taught in an academy. And some officers, especially male, I think women have a lot more self awareness just naturally. We're intuitive and we kind of listen to ourselves, but we also talk down to ourselves a lot more and second guess, especially in this type of profession. But you moved up the ranks. You're confident and you're kind, and that is just it's awesome. But I think that self awareness that you're able to bring I mean, it seems that it just like comes naturally to you. Is that something that you think came naturally, or you had to really work on? And
Oh, I had to definitely had to work on it. I, grew up in a house where emotion, you didn't show emotion. Hell, you don't cry, you don't do that, you don't show emotions. So I had to learn how to recognize those, how to recognize when I need to have that emotional response. And it's tough. It wasn't easy. And I still work on it. It's a work in progress, basically.
yeah, every day, absolutely. What are your signs when you realize, when you start to have those emotions? What are the signs that you're trying to listen for, or that you're like looking for that self awareness moment?
It can vary. Yeah, it can vary if I'm really quick, like, and snappy answering back to the kids or my husband, or just disassociating with them completely. They're on one side of the couch, I'm on the other, and I haven't said a word to them all day. And it's like, man, what's going on? And that's when I have to take a step back and kind of go, okay, what's bothering me? What truly is bothering me? And if it means just, like I said earlier, going out for a walk or going to the gym or going to do something to where I can clear my head to come back to be a better mom or wife to them is what I have to do.
Wow, that's great. I think the ability to recognize those, that's the first step. Absolutely, into being able to have coping skills and all of that, but you can't do these coping skills and all of that. I mean, you can if you don't without the self awareness, and maybe it'll come. But really, you need to know yourself first and recognize that, and being able to admit that is such an important, part of it. For me, I get sarcastic or snippy, or maybe I'm a little bit more emotional, or clinging to my husband, and I'm like, okay, why am I being so clingy right now? What is the feeling that I'm feeling insecure about, that I need that extra, like, not attention, but that affirmation? What is that? Because it's usually not something he did. It's usually something I totally did myself and just like brought up and made up in my own. It's not the real situation. They're off of real life things, but I'm over analyzing my type freak out, instead of just being like, hey, we're good, right? Yeah. Like, so I love that. I'm that that you're able to see that and keep moving forward. Speaking of that, there's often a silent cost to this work, the things that we never say out loud. Um, what's one of those costs for you, and how have you learned to give yourself grace to heal from it?
This one's kind of tough. So, realizing that it's okay to disconnect emotionally sometimes. Um, when you get home, sometimes you might need that few minutes, whether it's when you're taking your uniform off or sitting in your car for an extra 30 minutes or whatever it may be, you know, to recharge yourself and to allow you to come back to reality, essentially.
I love that. Wow. I think that's really important. Um, that grace, knowing that we're never going to be perfect, you know, with our type A personalities, we're constantly hard on ourselves. And the public's hard on us, and our command staff is hard on us. We're constantly under the microscope. And, I often find that we're still, with all of that going around, we're still our own worst enemies. And, you know, remembering to give yourself grace is just, it's a survival mechanism. But knowing that you're going to fall short, but using that as a learning lesson, right? And, you know, in in this capacity, I also want to say, we talk about forgiveness a lot, and you really defined grace and what that means, and I love that. And so I want to I want to just briefly touch on forgiveness and, you know, mercy. And forgiveness is something that you're giving to someone else, and it is truly a gift. Um and mercy is basically what you're not giving someone who deserves it. You're giving them mercy by not giving a punishment that they deserve. And forgiveness is giving forgiveness that may not be deserved. But, one and the other, they often work hand in hand. And I just thought, you know, saying that and combining that with, the grace that you were able to give yourself, I'm sure that there's many times that you had to also use forgiveness and mercy to heal from, the job, and just to cope and survive. So I just really admire that.
Mhm.
Um, so first responders often carry, a sense of humor as armor. Sometimes I definitely do that. How do you use humor, whether on a scene or at home? And is it a coping mechanism to stay grounded through the heaviness?
Oh, definitely. Um, my shift alone, we like, I can't even just say my shift. When I started this job, I got glitter bombed by a fellow officer. He had put really, really fine glitter in our air conditioned vents, and it was like mid-July, so it was hot and everything, so you're sweaty. So you have the air all the way on and turn the car on, and it hits me with purple glitter while I was en route to a call. I'm like, got to be kidding me. To this day, now I've been in the job, on the road for a few years. To this day, me and him still have a prank war going on. He got me the last time by putting paper bowls in my car, but it's coming. He's gonna get payback. But even on my shift too, we do the same thing. We'll do uh confetti cannon things, glitter bombs. We pull jokes on each other. I'm not gonna say that have I ever sent anybody looking for themselves in a field? Maybe. Just crazy that the description matches our uniform. But, it's just that's how we cope. You've gotta keep it light. We see so much heavy stuff day in and day out that you've gotta have that. And it's a team building, honestly. You joke around with each other. The famous word of, "Oh, if I don't joke with you, I don't like you." That's kinda what everybody always says. But my shift, definitely, it's a huge, huge thing that we do. I mean, we move each other's cars. If you leave it unlocked and it's running, we're gonna move your car. We have detached so many things, and put them backwards on there. We've handcuffed steering wheels. I mean, you name it, we have done it. So, hey,
I love that. The department and our PD had a friendly war going on, and I can't remember what we did it to. The lieutenant doesn't work anymore. He uh he had rigged the brakes to the horn and on the call, and we couldn't figure it out. And it's freezing outside, by the way. Like, you don't stand out there, work on your car, and like figure out wire. Like, very easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it was one of the funniest things because he had to go to a call. Like, he had to go. There's only 3 of us at the time.
We had a Cricut little machine one time. And so what you could set the timer on it where it would go off every few minutes, and it was a cricket sound, and it had a sticky like on the back. So we stuck it up underneath the passenger seat, and this guy always like, man, I think I had a cricket in my car. And I mean, it went on all night until he finally found it like a few days later. So, I mean, it's just how you have a good time at work.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, like you said, it's team building. It's bonding,
Right.
and it's the healthier bond, not a trauma bond. And those are so important to have. And it's healthy because you're not, using department resources or anything like that. You're having a good time. It doesn't stop you from doing the work, and it does stop the trauma bonding. And no matter what that happens, but to be able to bond over something that is positive in this job is so important, because often we bond through trauma bonding, be on those hard calls together, and knowing that no one else is going to experience that except for you and the other 2 officers that are on the scene.
Right.
And of course, things can go through court and all of that, but it's different when you're there. And I love that you guys are able to do that and have those practical jokes. I myself took a joke too far. My colleague left his computer open, and I sent a lovely email to the chief on his behalf. We're a very small department. There was 22 of us. I did come clean. He was very upset. So was the chief. I apologized. It was over. I never did it again. It was fine.
Oh, we definitely have done that. People resigning to go move to Florida to, do underwater basket weaving. That's a great one. Like that happens. Everybody knows you don't leave your computer up around here.
Yeah, I got in a little trouble for that one, but
well, I had a counseling statement one time for directing traffic while performing Baby Shark. When that was a big deal a few years back. I didn't have my traffic vest on, so I got a counseling statement. But man, I got a lot of views on Facebook though.
Good times. I love that. So, in contrast to that, when you think about your toughest night, maybe the one that tested everything you believed about yourself, what was the breakthrough afterward, and maybe what changed the way you lead, love, or live?
So this happened right after I got out of the FTO program. So this was very early on in my career. Yeah, the guy I was working with, we worked a mid shift, so it was shift change. We were the only 2 still in, service technically at that point while they were changing shifts. And we got a call for 2 guys fighting, essentially, in an apartment complex. He gets there first, and he's at the top of the apartment complex, and he's talking with him. I said, all right, well, I'm going to go talk to the other party and see what's going on. I go down there, and I park my car, and I see him walking out of the apartment. And I said, hey, man, let me talk to you for a moment. He said, no, we're not doing this today. And this was in November. So it was a little chilly. And he had a big, camo coat on. And I said, no, man, I just want to talk to you for a minute. Let's just talk. He goes, I'm not doing this today. And he walked away from me. And the whole time I'm trying to just get his attention, again, not trying to stop, not trying to put hands on him just yet, but just trying to get him to stop. And I follow him into the hallway of this apartment complex. And I said, man, I'm just trying to talk to you. And I go to grab him by his, by the jacket. And he said, I told you I'm not doing this today. And he turned around with a handgun, fired 2 rounds. And thankfully, they missed me. It was at point blank range. How they missed me, only the good Lord knows. By this time, my partner had gotten down there, had seen it happen. I go for cover, and he runs out the other end. Of course, we report shots fired. My partner looks at me, "Are you hit?" I'm like, "Not that I know of." It was, so loud. It's, just crazy in that moment. And so manhunt ensues because he ran. We ended up catching him about 30 minutes later. And as they were bringing him up, he looks at me and goes, "Oh, I'm sorry." I didn't say anything because I knew not to say anything at that point. Because one, I was angry. So go back. The investigator says, "Hey, I need you to fill out a statement. Can you go to your car?" I said, "Yeah, it's no problem." I go to my car, and as I'm filling out my statement, I get a phone call from my daughter, who at that time was 7. That'd be my oldest. I get a phone call from her, and she says, "Hey, Mama, I want a chocolate cake for my birthday party this weekend." I'm dealing with just getting shot at, and Mom still is there. She doesn't know. "Okay, baby, Mommy's busy, but I'll call you back." About that time, my husband shows up. So we had to work different sides. He worked south side, I worked the north side. He had tried calling me and couldn't get a hold of me, and happened to pull up our call screen and saw where I was on a call where shots were fired. So he shows up and makes sure I'm okay. Obviously, go through the whole spiel. I didn't fire back, and I got Monday morning quarterbacked for not firing back. "Well, why didn't you shoot back?" Well, I was in an apartment hallway, multiple apartments on either side of me. There's no cover, no nothing like that. I'm getting cover, and then we'll go from there. But being such a young officer at that time, brand new into this, that was tough. I went and finished my shift out that week, or that night, that whole weekend. Come Monday, they asked, "Hey, are you good?" I'm like, "Yeah, great, fantastic." Big bad cop, because at that point, I'm like, I'm fine. A year later, like I said earlier, is when I had my breakdown at the doctor's office. I realized I needed help. I needed to talk to somebody about it. It was so early on in my career. I was like, am I in the right profession? Am I doing the right thing? I'm weak if I'm having to talk about this. But when I realized that help was there, and it did help me become a better officer by doing it, that's when I was like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. So the way that it changed me for the rest of my career and what I focus on now, that is one of the first videos that I show my trainees when they come in. I did not have my body camera on, but my partner did. Because when I was getting out of the car, I was trying to turn it on, and it did not activate. But when my partner got there, he caught the tail end of it. And I show my trainees every day. I was like, even when you're doing everything right, it doesn't matter. I was like, and there's only one person that is either going to keep you here or take you. And I was like, and that's the good Lord. I said, the good Lord decided not to take me that day. I said, he had bigger and better things planned for me. I said, because he would have continued shooting. I said, we found the gun, and the casing had stovepiped in the gun. It was the only reason he didn't continue shooting that night. When we looked at trajectory and stuff, it was like a shot this way and another one like that way. They barely missed me. So, I tell them all the time, no matter what you do, sometimes you can do everything right and stuff is going to happen. But, to never lose that, never get complacent. And then I tell them the story about how I needed help and how it's okay. And that is one of the first conversations we have, because I want them to understand that as a new officer, things are going to happen. And even down in your career, 10 years down the road, there's people that have been in this job forever, never been shot at, never had shots fired, never had anything go on like that. And, I want my new guys to understand it's okay to talk about it. That stigma is going away. The more that I've been to leadership classes and the more that I've dealt with, that a lot of departments are trying to move into that. It's okay to talk about having a bad day or, your feelings or whatever may happen. So I definitely always use that as my example. And that's pretty much how it molded my career when it comes to a lot of the way that I respond to stuff now.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that moment with me and our listeners. I can't even imagine all that you went through to deal with that, and having that in the beginning of your career and reaching out for help. Those are commendable. A lot of people don't do that, and I love that you promote that for your officers as well. Keeping that confidential and going through that and helping them, that's incredible.
And I can't even imagine what was going through your mind when that was going on. Everything happened split second, blink of an eye.
Mm-hmm.
And that like you said, Monday morning quarterbacking, it's one of the worst things.
People that I trusted, people that I had watched in this, profession, sitting there telling me, well, you should have shot back. You should have done that. And I did call somebody that was a huge mentor, taught us in the academy. I called him that weekend. I said, hey, I'm really second guessing what I did. Did I do something wrong? And he said, did you make it home that morning? I said, well, yeah, I got home that morning. He said, then you did everything right. He said, the goal of us is to go home every day. He said, so you did something right. He said, don't listen to them. He said, because they're just telling you what they say they would do. He said, but they've never been in that situation. They're like, it's completely different. And I was like, so, that was probably the hardest thing, is the scrutiny from your peers. But like I tell the new guys now, I'm like, yes, we will go over stuff if you do, if we need to, but I'm not going to tell you as long as you get home what you did was wrong. So as long as everything is justified, of course, but
being able to look yourself in the mirror every day, because no one else in this world they can be as close to you as possible, but no one else is going to walk that exact same walk in your shoes. It is you at the end of the day who had to make those split-second decisions, knowing that you're going to be scrutinized for the rest of your career. You can go to jail. You can, you can become the suspect in a case where you're the victim, just because of a split-second decision. And, what you said about your leader saying, well, you should have shot back, and giving you that grief of not firing, you had the option to shoot back, but you also de-escalated by getting cover, and you still were able to get the guy, and he lived too. So you possibly saved both of your lives by doing that. So, I commend you for being able to do that and take that criticism, because a lot of people, you second guess yourselves every time. And I don't know how it works in your agency, but a shooting investigation can take forever, and then you gotta get the reverse Garrity, and they're not going to prosecute you and all of that before you want to give your statement. So, I commend you. It is a hard place to be at, and no one is going to be in that same situation with you ever. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Of course.
Well, finally, when you look at your journey, officer, wife, mother, negotiator, what story do you hope your daughters tell one day about who their mom was behind the badge?
Oh, man. That she was goal-oriented, that she was a hard worker, and that she loved them dearly, and that I would do anything for them. I push my girls, and I always tell them, I'm like, the odds are always stacked against, certain aspects of this job when it comes to females and stuff. So to be able to get where I am now is because I was determined, and because I had the people that would push me and people that were there for me. But I definitely want my girls to know that if you set a goal and you set your mind to it, you can achieve it. My oldest wants to be a prosecutor when she gets older, and I'm like, ecstatic for her. And she's like, it's going to be right. Then I always tell her, I'm like, baby, set that goal. I was like, and if you set that goal, you can achieve it. I promise you can. I said, I did it. I said, I set a goal every year, and I always talk to my husband about it, but every year I set a goal for something I want to do. Last year it was finishing instructor school. I wanted to be able to teach, so I did that. Year before was a leadership class, and getting all of my supervision classes, everything like that. Year before that was crisis negotiator. So I always try to set a goal, and that's what I tell my kids. I was like, have a goal in mind when you're doing something. I said, and work towards it. I said, you'll succeed in it. So that's kind of what I just want them to always remember.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
You being on here today has just been incredible. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Badges and Breakthroughs podcast. And a huge thank you to Lieutenant Laura Turner for such an honest, vulnerable, and powerful conversation. Laura, your willingness to pull back the curtain on leadership, crisis work, family life, and mental health in this profession is exactly why this show exists. And I'm grateful, that you trusted us with your story today. So if you're tuning in and you're a first responder, a veteran, or a family member, I want to personally invite you to our Blonde and Blue community at patreon.com/blondeandblue. You can join as a free member and get access to a nationwide network of peer support, resources, and our weekly virtual peer support meetings every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, where you never have to carry this stuff alone. Right now, I'm also opening up something really special for agencies across the country. I'm offering 40 hours of free peer support training and 40 hours of free mental health and wellness training for first responder agencies that partner with us. That includes law enforcement, fire, and EMS. We started with 5 agency slots, and as of today, we only have 3 left. So if you're listening and you know your people need this, now is the time to reach out. This is a nationwide offer, and it can come from any rank, but it does need to be authorized by your command staff at the lieutenant level or above, with them CC'd on the email so everyone's on the same page. All you have to do is send me an email sharing your interest and why your agency wants to bring this training and support to your people. You can contact me directly at blondeandblue72@gmail.com, or you can call my phone number, which is on every one of my websites, so I might as well say it here, 818-800-1147, to start the conversation and lock in one of those remaining spots. We have 3 left. So if today's episode spoke to you, please share it with a colleague, a partner, or someone you know who wears the badge or loves someone who does. Don't forget to follow the show and leave a review for more first responders and families so that they can find these stories in this community. This has been the Badges and Breakthroughs podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Bates. Don't forget, your scars are not your weakness. They're proof that you survived, and here we honor that. So until next time, stay safe, take care of your people, and don't forget to take care of yourself too.